We started this case literally 5 months behind the ball. I mean, we were notified that there could have been a crime 5 months later, and so we're having to go back and try to find evidence that may not even be there anymore. And that's been one of the difficult parts.
Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The story I have for you today is about a little boy who at this point has been missing for 3 years. And his mother, whom police believe was responsible for his disappearance, has only just recently been apprehended by authorities. This is the story of Noel Rodriguez Alvarez. Noel Rodriguez Alvarez was born on February 2, 2017, to his mother, Cindy Rodriguez Singh, and his father, Mariano Alvarez Contreras. The little boy had been born prematurely at just 23 weeks, which left him with some developmental disabilities in his speech and behavior. This included speech delays and isotropia in both eyes, meaning that they were turned inwards. He additionally had chronic lung disease, which he needed to use oxygen for. Noel lived with his mother, Cindy, her boyfriend, Archdeep Singh, and his 6 siblings, who ranged in age from 5 months to 11 years old. However, Cindy actually had a total of 10 children altogether, but the oldest 3 were being raised by her parents. So Noel and his family lived in the 3700 block of Wisteria Drive in Fort Worth, Texas. And while there was a house there, they actually stayed inside of a shed located at the back of the property. The owner of the home, 71-year-old Charles Parson, wasn't related to them, but he had known Cindy for close to 10 years. Apparently, one day, he had found her and some of her children sleeping in her car outside of his house, so he had then invited them to come live with him, which seems a little odd, don't you think? Then, when Cindy got married in 2021 and her family continued to grow bigger, Charles agreed to let them build a shed at the back of the property for them to all live in. However, while the structure had electricity, it didn't have running water, so Charles would leave the back door of his house open so they could come in and use things such as the shower, toilet, and sinks. Some of the family members also still lived inside of Charles's home, in his 2 spare bedrooms, because there wasn't enough room for all of them outside in the shed. And while Cindy would sometimes help pay for groceries, she never paid a single dime in rent. In 2020, Noel and 2 of his siblings had been removed from their mother's custody after she had a drunk driving incident where she had hit a pole and some of the kids were inside the vehicle. The children had then been placed into foster care. Noel and his siblings' new foster mom was named Patricia Paris, and she had experience in looking after children with special needs. According to Patricia, Noel was a great kid. He was playful and happy and loved interacting with other children. He also loved hugs and Happy Meals, and he had a very special place in her heart. The little boy thrived in her care, and the foster mother said, "Everything a kid with special needs is told he can't do, he mastered that."
He was a sweet little boy. That was our boy. And he loved to give hugs, and he was just a sweet little boy.
But then in 2021, Cindy regained custody of her children. And while Patricia was able to keep in contact with them for some time afterwards, by fall of 2022, Cindy stopped answering her phone calls. This was even though Patricia and her husband had told Cindy that if she ever felt overwhelmed and needed any help with Noel and his siblings, she could call them at any point and they would come to get them. But that wouldn't end up happening because on March 20th, 2023, police were contacted by Texas Child Protective Investigations. They said that multiple family members of Noel's had not seen the little boy since October of 2022. And the last time they did see him, which was in the hospital at the birth of his twin siblings, he looked rather unhealthy and malnourished. It was also discovered that in October, Noel had missed one of his scheduled Department of Health and Medical appointments. In fact, he'd missed several appointments by this time, and he hadn't seen a doctor since July. But due to his medical issues, Noel needed to be seen on a regular basis. Soon after, Cindy received a letter from the Department of Health and Medical threatening to cancel her benefits if Noel wasn't brought in. So she would ask a friend if her son could pose as Noel, claiming that the little boy had COVID at the time, which is why she wasn't able to bring him in. Authorities additionally discovered that Noel, who was 6 at the time, had never been enrolled in school. So due to all this concerning information, Child Protective Services contacted police and requested that a welfare check be done at the home. When officers arrived at the residence, they were met by 37-year-old Cindy, and she claimed that her son was actually in Mexico with his biological father. However, once Noel's father, Mariano, was contacted by authorities, he told them that he had never even met his son, because before he was born, he had been deported back to Mexico from the United States. Records from Homeland Security would support his statements, and he was therefore cleared as a suspect. Now that police had confirmed that Noel was not with his father, they tried to reach back out to his mother, Cindy, but she began avoiding them. So investigators called up the school where Noel's siblings attended to check in on them, and they found that they had been absent that day, and that Cindy had contacted the school about unenrolling them. This greatly concerned authorities, so due to this and the fact that Cindy had an extensive criminal history, a warrant was issued for her arrest. An Amber Alert for Noel was also issued on March 25, 2023. It asked the public to be on the lookout for him, his mother, and a 2012 Chevrolet Silverado. When detectives began speaking with Noel's other family members, his uncle, Cindy's brother, said that he had not seen his nephew in about a year. The last time he had seen him was at a family gathering, and during that time, Cindy had been withholding food and water from the boy. According to her, it was because Noel would frequently pee himself, and she didn't want to have to keep changing him. Because, God forbid she be a mother. When one relative ended up giving Noel some water and Cindy found out, she began screaming at him and hit him with her car keys. Cindy was also telling people that she believed that Noel was evil, he was a demon, and she was convinced that he was going to hurt his newborn twin siblings. According to Cindy's mother, her daughter would frequently complain about Noel's disabilities and medical issues, and she would demean him. Then Noel's uncle said that Cindy had made the startling claim that she'd sold her son to a woman in the parking lot of a Fiesta Mart. However, when they asked her to contact the woman and prove that this was true, Cindy told them that she couldn't, because according to her, she was afraid that CPS would be called. But once police looked further into this story, they found no proof that Noel had been sold to anyone. The same evening that the Amber Alert had been issued, around 9 p.m. on March 25th, authorities located Cindy's Chevrolet Silverado, which was parked at a garage at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. They learned that the mother, along with the rest of her family, had driven there, then boarded a flight to Turkey, which later connected to India. Come to find out, they had left the day before, and 6-year-old Noel was not listed as being a passenger on the flight. So it was confirmed that the last time Noel had been seen by anyone outside of the home was in late October, during the birth of his twin siblings. Then on November 1st, Cindy and the rest of the family, again minus Noel, had gotten their passport photos taken. The next day, she applied for those passports. Then on November 6th, she was online researching trips to India. Months later, on March 21st, Cindy and her husband Arshdeep obtained visas to India. Arshdeep had a warrant issued for his arrest at this time, for the charge of abandoning and endangering a child. After it was found that he'd stolen $10,000 from his employer shortly before fleeing, he was further charged.
These new pictures of Arshdeep Singh were taken at a bank, police said, just hours before he fled for India with his wife last month. After police started asking about 6-year-old Noel Rodriguez Alvarez, they say Singh went to a convenience store where he worked.
Investigators learned that Arshdeep first fraudulently altered the company's cash deposit records, likely in order to prevent detection, and then removed over $10,000 in cash from the company's safe
The money may have helped fund the family's disappearance, planned as far back as the end of October last year.
Police went back to the residence where Cindy and her family had lived, and this time they would speak with the home's owner, Charles. He claimed to have been stunned that Noel was missing and that Cindy and the rest of the family had fled the country. Charles told investigators that the last time he had seen the little boy was at Thanksgiving time in 2022, and he believed that ever since then, he'd been with his father in Mexico, because that's what Cindy had told him. Then he said that the last time he'd seen the rest of the family was on March 22nd, when they'd given him a ride to the hospital where he was supposed to have a surgical procedure done. But they hadn't come to pick him up like they had promised. Charles claimed to be Noel's godfather, and he also didn't believe that Cindy or Arshdeep would ever have hurt the boy, as they were good, loving parents. He stated that they spoiled their children because they always had toys and clothes, which, if you ask me, is not spoiling them, it's just giving them the basic necessities. Charles didn't believe that Cindy thought she did anything wrong, but rather had just escaped in a panic because she was afraid that her other children would be taken by CPS.
But you know why, if she had all those plans, she suddenly up and left?
Scared that she was going to go to prison for 8 years and then not watch her kids grow up. Her you take away from her twins, she ain't going to get to see them if she goes to prison.
She was scared that she was going to go to prison because
Noel was
missing?
Yeah. Because that and CPS is going to come take her kids to start off with. You know that with Noel missing, they're going to take the kids. And now people are saying she was abusive. I've never seen her abuse Noel or any of the kids.
Also, according to Charles, when Noel's twin siblings had been born in October of 2022, it caused the little boy a great deal of stress. So he would go on hunger strikes, refusing to eat, and he eventually became dangerously thin. While at Charles's home, law enforcement would get his permission to search the property, and they would find the Mexican idol of death, Santa Muerte, everywhere. The same symbol that Cindy had on the back of her truck. This included a large shrine of Santa Muerte near the family's shed. It's believed that Cindy may have been part of a cult centered around the saint. While the use of Santa Muerte can be completely harmless, it's also often used by cartels as their saint of protection. And there have additionally been cases of people who murdered others to provide an offering for Santa Muerte. Now, police were also very interested in a large concrete patio that had been installed in the backyard just 3 weeks prior. Before that, there had been a makeshift shed in the area, but it had been demolished to make way for the patio. The patio that Noel's mother, Cindy, had paid $5,000 to have installed, using her family's entire tax refund. Which seemed very suspicious, since she didn't own the home and had never paid a dime in rent. However, when authorities dug up the slab, they would find no traces of Noel. Charles, who was very annoyed by detectives digging up the patio, said,
And I kept telling them the slab was poured after Noel supposedly had disappeared. Why would he be underneath the slab? I think they just tore it up because they don't have no idea where the boy is and they're frustrated.
But the fact that the concrete slab had been laid after Noel disappeared makes it even more suspicious, not less suspicious.
But why was the slab poured and then the family immediately left?
Because she built the slab because, she had the twins. She wanted to build a patio so the twins would have someplace she could sit in the patio and watch her kids play on the trampoline and the swings back there during the summer. But she eventually was going to add another room to the back of the house because her oldest daughter, the one that was with her now, not her oldest, but the one that lived with her, was going to need a room. She wanted a room, build a room. That's why it was heavy on one end. They kept saying it was heavy on one end because she was actually going to build another room back there.
But what do you make of all this that's happening?
I know the police are desperate to find the boy, but they're looking in the wrong place, is all I can say, because he's not here.
Where do you think he is?
I have no idea. I think he's in Mexico, to be honest with you.
Do you think he's alive?
Yeah, I think he's alive, and that's why I told him I wasn't going to go to that deal they had last night. Because until you show me a body that he's dead, then I'll believe you. Because I think no way he's dead. somebody's got him. Somebody's scared that they're going to get in trouble with the law because they've got him, and they got him illegally, basically. She didn't go through the courts like I asked her. Like I told her, if you're going to adopt Noel, go through the court system, but she didn't do that.
Then when police brought cadaver dogs into the scene, they would alert to the concrete patio. They also alerted officers to a carpet that was found in a nearby dumpster. This carpet had once lined the floor to the makeshift shed where the patio now stood. And it had been disposed of by Cindy's husband, Arshdeep, just the day after police had been sent to the home to do a welfare check on Noel. Then once the patio had been dug up, cadaver dogs again alerted officials to the smell of human decomposition, this time in the topsoil that was directly underneath the concrete. The police chief would say, one of the interesting pieces was that the carpet wasn't even at the house. It wasn't even at the location. So for the canines to be able to alert on a piece of evidence at one place and then go over and alert again where it was previously, all that tends to add up. It does lead us to believe that there were human remains at one point in time in the shed that used to exist where that concrete patio sits. On March 31st, police filed felony charges of abandonment and endangerment against Cindy and her boyfriend Arshdeep. Days later, on April 6th, they announced that they no longer believed that Noel was alive, and the case was now a death investigation. Then on October 30th, a grand jury issued 4 indictments against Noel's mother, Cindy, which included capital murder, 2 counts of injury to a child, and 1 count of abandoning without the intent to return. The search for the little boy continued, but with no results. Authorities were also unsuccessful in locating Cindy, Arshdeep, and Noel's other siblings. As such, the case stayed silent for a while, but then in July of 2025, Cindy was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, and a $250,000 reward leading to her capture was offered. A little over a month later, on August 21st, 2025, Noel's mother was finally found. She'd been hiding out in India, and was then transported back to the United States, where she was booked into Tarrant County Jail on a $10 million bond. Cindy's boyfriend Arshdeep has still not been located, and neither has Noel's body. There's been no official word on where the boy's siblings currently are. Cindy's mother and Noel's grandmother said that she believes that Cindy killed her son, and that's why she fled. She also believes that Charles Parson knows more than he's leading on. The city of Everman voted to construct a new playground at Clyde Pittman Park in memory of Noel. The playground is called the Noel Alvarez Playground, and it has special equipment which is meant for children with disabilities like Noel. A memorial plaque was also installed at the playground, which details the little boy's story. When naming the playground, the community chose to leave the Rodriguez part out of his name, since that's Noel's mother's last name, and they didn't want her to have any recognition whatsoever. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon, so check it out on patreon.com/awickedworld, or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims are never forgotten, and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a story you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email to awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.